Well, good morning, everyone.
Thanks for helping my friend yesterday.
Oh, yeah, I will not forget. That's what Dan.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to Primetime in the BU Library. Thanks for coming out this morning. Primetime is a celebration of learning that goes beyond the classroom here at Bethel for faculty, students, and staff. It's a collaborative project between the Friends of the BU Library, Faculty Development, and other offices. This morning, that includes the Office of Off-Campus Programs. Next Thursday, or our next session will be Thursday, November 7th at 11:15. It'll be a celebration of poetry where Dr. Angela Shannon's fall poetry class will be presenting some of their original works. So you will want to join us for that. Today, my name is Tannen Brecky. I get the pleasure of working as the Assistant Director for Service Learning and Community Engagement, which really means I'm working with the Bethel Frogtown and Summit-University partnership. It's a 21-year-old partnership that's focused on doing place-based partnership around developing mutually beneficial projects between the Frogtown Summit-University neighborhoods and Bethel University. Part of our work through that partnership is getting students into the neighborhood working with community organizations. And this summer we had 3 wonderful students you're going to hear about in a minute share about their work with the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance. So the 3 students that we'll be sharing today, and these 3 students worked throughout the summer for about 20 hours doing a variety of different projects with the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance. But the 3 students that I'm sharing today, the first one you'll hear from is Renee Pegler. Renee is a social work and reconciliation studies major. Sean Doherty. Sean is a political science and reconciliation studies major. And then Lizzy Carson, who's a nursing major. They work with the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance, which is a network of gardens and organizations in Frogtown and Summit-University that are working on providing access to quality food for people in the neighborhood. The co-facilitators of that partnership or that alliance is Melvin, Giles, and Phinney. So they'll also be here to talk today. The way that we developed this theme and what each of us are going to share on today, and the theme is deep connections. The way that emerged was throughout the summer we met about once a week in my office. We sat around the table. Sometimes we had some food. And what we would do is kind of process, talk about some of the logistics of what we were doing, but then we talked about what's the deeper meaning of how is this impacting our lives, how are we being shaped by this experience. And out of that, these themes emerged. And so that's what really has led to this today. So Renee is going to be our first presenter. Renee is going to talk about the importance of connection. Lizzy's then going to come up and share about connecting white people to social justice work. Sean's going to talk about healing connections to the earth. And then Melvin and Megan are going to talk about connecting the generations and mentorship.
So I'll be talking about the importance of connection. So going into this summer, I was really hoping to learn about gardening and community, specifically since at the time I was really interested in community development. But I never realized how much I would learn about connection. Melvin, Melvin Giles, who will also be presenting, right from the get-go, he mentioned how he really wanted us to get our hands in the dirt. And I think all of us were like, okay. But so he was really focused on those first couple weeks of just getting connected, getting grounded in the community. And so that's what we attempted to do, I guess. We really had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. Or there was like, what's the structure and all that different stuff. But those first few weeks of just like navigating the community and navigating, okay, what does our role look like? So kind of as I was in my own experience of connection, just thinking about ways that I was able to connect with in different ways, and one of those things was connecting with the environment. So our main role was gardening. So whether that was weeding or planting things or watering, basic upkeep, we were learning to connect with the soil. And for myself, I found that something really peaceful. And just a way to learn about my surroundings, learn about even just the soil in the community. I would literally step in the garden, I would just be covered in dirt. It was inevitable. But also just learning the impact that soil and green spaces have on the community. It brings people together, it promotes health and wealth. And also just connection with people. In the different gardens we were in, we were able to meet different people. At the main garden that I worked in was this Aurora St. Anthony Sanctuary Peace Garden, and just across the street was an amazing family that on a daily basis was just able to say hello to, interact with weekly, and that was just a beautiful connection that was able to be formed. And also through a variety of meetings that we were able to attend, whether that was the Reconciliation Lunch meeting or the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance meeting. Just being able to see people come together from different backgrounds and organizations, sharing food around a table was just really powerful. I really had, prior to the summer, really loved the idea of food and connection, but just like seeing how much power that has of like bringing people together. And you can't learning how like you can't do change alone. You have to be with people and create those connections in order to promote change. And lastly, the connection with the community. This was just, I don't know, the community itself was really beautiful in this summer. And some of the ways that we were able to connect with the community was through helping and supporting different events that were going on. For example, the peace celebration that occurred at the beginning of the summer. We were able to go to some of the meetings and planning meetings and just be a part of that and see the promotion of peace and promotion of community, as well as the Northern Lights Festival that was in the Twin Cities, which was really focused on history and creating art collectively and bringing community together through art. And then also the national acronym OUT, which, I don't know, hopefully you guys were able to participate in some sort of national night out. But just being able to participate in the planning of that and reaching out to community members and seeing how people come together around activities and entertainment and food and serving together. So just throughout this whole experience, being able to learn what that means to be grounded in community. It could have been really easy to go to the gardens and to the meetings and focus solely on projects and meeting, but I would have missed so much. More important than the projects were the connections I made. I learned so much through the many connections with the environment, people, and community that honestly I would never have learned if we were so tied up in a schedule or even just in a classroom. Just like learning so much about connection was just really beautiful this summer.
So I'm Lizzy. I'm currently a nursing major and I'm a sophomore here. When I decided to join the partnership this summer, the main reason was, one, I love social justice and I want to be more active and involved in it. And then in addition to that, as a nursing major, I wanted to see the implications of just like health and food and how that affects people. And so I guess there's multiple things that I really learned in light of being a white person, a European American within this setting. It was the first time that I had stepped into a community which I was not an active participant already within that community, and so it was a whole new experience for me in general. And I think the first thing that I really learned was, as soon as I got there, there were either two ways I could respond. Or two ways I guess that people might tend to respond. I could either jump in and try to do things right away, try to see what the problems were, try to fix it, or I could sit back afraid of not knowing what to do, questioning where my part was in this. And so through some good conversations at each of our weekly meetings, we really got a chance to discuss the implications of this and just have great conversation around how to balance those two things. Not going into community and thinking like we know it all and that we understand their stories, but then also not waiting to take action. And so along with that, I think one of the biggest things that I learned was my responsibility in social justice, more than anything, is actually to educate my fellow brothers and sisters who are white or who identify as European American. And so more than like trying to go and change things and like just be a part of the actual steps, it's really going to take educating people first. And even for me myself, like I don't claim to know anything. Like I have a long journey ahead of me, a lot of growth to do, and I think it's super important that I take the time to identify like the emotions that I'm feeling, to identify where I think I belong in the social justice call, and then to do that alongside other people. And there were several instances I saw this summer where there were volunteers who were white who came into the community, and of course like good intentions, and there were a few instances where people did things that weren't exactly culturally appropriate, and in those instances I had to make the decision of, am I going to step forward and say something and talk to them about it, or am I going to wait for someone else to say it? And so I guess just being able to wrestle through that, and it was a great opportunity for the rubber to hit the road of me actually being in situations where I can have those conversations and decide where my place is in this and how educating people who identify as white and learning alongside them is super, super important. And so one way that I really saw this play out too was Melvin did a great job of introducing healing circles to us. And so instead of just, at Bethel sometimes we call it caucusing, or in other settings, healing circles are a chance for people to come and have those conversations in a way that will hopefully lead to restoration and reconciliation. And so at a few of our meetings we got to have the opportunity to sit down and talk with people who had similar experiences as us. And I think this allowed for a great time of question asking and greater understanding. And I think it is super important for white people to have space to do that, just because there are implications and trauma that we can bring up if we seek out those questions with people that have experienced traumatic and oppressive events. And so it's important that we have spaces where people can gather in healing circles and allow for reconciliation. So through all this, I just learned that it's super important for me to continue to do personal work and to understand my role in this and the role that my ancestors had in negative events that have taken place in these communities, but then to just also be able to reflect on the fact that I am a part of this and I can do something, but that I must join the efforts to educate people in our community. And so one thing I just want to give a quick shout out is to here on campus we have United Cultures of Bethel, and so that is a great space to have those conversations. If anyone here is interested in that, we have subgroups for each of those, and that's been a way I think I've been able to continue to live that out and kind of step into trying to learn alongside people when it comes to social work and whiteness and just the implications of that.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sean, and thank you for coming to hear us speak about our experience with FSU and UFGA. I think one of the cool things that all of us three had going in is that we all came from different practices. So Renee was nursing, and Renee was social work, and then Lizzy was nursing, and myself, I'm political science and reconciliation studies. And I think what I carried into UFGA was I was actually really looking to learn about what power looked like cultivated at a local level, and kind of what grassroots organizations look like. What does advocating for a community from community organizers, what does that actually look like? Because I just wanted that experience. So I was really surprised that that actually wasn't what I took out the most from this experience. There's actually a really deep love for the environment and actually like greenery. Like, I was so surprised because that's just not how my brain works. Like, I'm not somebody that's deeply moved by plants or by trees. I'm not super environmentally conscious, but what I actually found was so much love for like the rhythms of gardening. Like, I found so much peace just being in the gardens that we actually all took care of. I think we took care of like 6 different gardens. That was the real like framework of our summer. And now that we're deep into a Minnesota winter, or we're getting deep into a Minnesota winter, I'm finding how much I miss just being in the soil, surrounded by life. And that's such a healing thing, I think, that we kind of lose sight of, is how healing it is to be surrounded by life. And I think because we have like half of our year is surrounded by white, it's kind of like something that we kind of just lose sight of when we're not surrounded by plants everywhere. Like, I think what I'm carrying the most out of this experience with UFGA is how valuable it is to be surrounded by life, and how much it's healing. The rhythms that were so healing, I think, to me, were like weeding and planting, and kind of seeing like the work that you put in while things are growing, like what that does to see your hard work reflected in that way. So yeah, I think what I'm taking out the most is that it's actually really important what we see around us and how we choose to move in an environmentally conscious way, I guess, because there's life around us. That's actually like something really true that you actually have to consciously think about. And I think that's what this experience has given me the most, is that healing comes in different forms, and power comes in different forms, and we just need to be conscious of that. So yeah, I don't have a lot to say other than that.
I will say you are seeing the front stage. The backstage is, when we were talking about weeding during the summertime, Sean did not have such a big smile on his face. So true. There was a few days like, dang, we gotta weed again? Those things keep coming back. So, I'm gonna invite Megan and Melvin to come up. I'm so honored to be able to do this work with community partners that are so committed to Bethel and our students. I am so moved by the two of them and the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance. We've been a part of the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance since its conception in, was it 2011? Or 14, okay. Seems a little bit longer than that. But, and one of the things that I've come to realize over the last couple of years is how beautiful this partnership is in connecting the generations. Mm-hmm. We live in a world where our younger people and those of us who are moving into or already in eldership don't have deep connections. And I saw this summer and I've seen it for the last couple summers, where our Bethel students will come and they'll spend some time, and Melvin will start to give them names. Right, and I'm spacing out the name that you gave this group this summer.
Well, I would probably call them the environmental group.
Okay. And when Melvin started doing that, like giving the groups names, I thought he was doing it. We had a lot of fun with the names. Names have a lot of creativity to them. But I started to realize eventually that as he was naming our students, he was pulling out these deep values and these beliefs and these things that these students were growing into. And the students were starting to lean into that in a really, really beautiful way that I found to be a beautiful process. So I've asked Melvin and Megan to come and just share a little bit about their part in this project and that mentorship and how that impacts the their students and how it impacts them. So Melvin, I'm going to give you this microphone here.
Hello, Bethel.
Hello, Melvin.
Like to start, or?
Well, I can start just by saying a few things about what Tanner said. The Urban Farm and Garden Alliance was official in 2014, but Melvin and Afro Eco had started cultivating those connections long before Urban Farm and Garden Alliance came on the scene. And also, the name that was given to these three was the Reconcilers.
Yes. Did you hear that? Can you say it again?
Come on now, yes,
The
Come on.
Reconcilers.
yes.
So,
Well, anytime I'm on campus, I just get kind of happy. It is so great just to see the change, and I know we're on a time period. And Tanya wants us to talk about a certain thing, but I'm going to tell you, I got to talk about these three. Because they are just so special. And there is a reason they was called the Reconcilers. But I'm just going to go down the list. Miss Renee actually became kind of like the Earth Woman. She has such a deep compassion for just touching her, being in the ground in the garden. Sometime I would think that she was lost somewhere in space in the garden, but she was just really connecting to it. And it's really easy to get Lizzy's name because she drove this cool looking moped. She was driving around the neighborhood like that woman, and she was taking care of business. If we needed some muscle, where's Batwoman? She took care of it. And again, Sean probably was really the easiest. I started calling him the senator right away. Once I found out that he was about a different type of power. And I just want you all to really give them another applause, please. I have this unique role of having a special kinship to Bethel, particularly because of the guy back there in the back row, Mr. Harvey. And I'm always be blessed by him. I always introduce Tandon as my brother in the neighborhood. Just had the opportunity to do that yesterday. We had a woman from Honduras come in, and it was really good to see Tandon shivering in the cold, come to meet her. And she taught me this cool word that everyone probably knows, umbraca. We were talking about something, and I just said, yeah, there's no white people around. And she just used her language. But I'm gonna ask Megan to help me share about the mentorship, because for us, we learned. And we had 3 great teachers this year.
yeah. First of all, what these 3 added was, while they were having this enriching experience, we were gaining capacity for the Urban Farm and Garden Alliance. So if we didn't have you there to help with those gardens, we couldn't do it. So that adds a tremendous amount of woman manpower to our connections. And I just want to say that I get enriched every year when I meet Bethel students, and as I did this year. For me, I've been working in the neighborhood for about 10 years, and I still go through these processes that these 3 went through this summer. It's a learning journey, and I am just so grateful when I get to see these 3 different generous spirits, what they come with and what they give. And you know, we always, it's just consciousness expanding. So it's really a favorite part of mine. When I do the children's garden in the summer, and going with you to plant tiny little things and Miss Joyce's sprouts and just to see what came of that. Did you guys all see that picture? We planted tiny little sprouts. Miss Joyce is an elder that lives in King's Crossing, and she plants all these things in pots because she wants us to plant them in gardens so that she can come and pick these things. She doesn't have room enough for all these, I think, what was it? Turnips, collards, and mustards. And so we planted them in the garden that wasn't active this summer, and there was no water. And anyway, these three planted them in there thinking, this is a big loss, let's just work that off. Well, we came and did a tour, I don't know, it was after the gardening season, it was in September, I think. Came, and these turnips were this big. I mean, I kept telling Miss Joyce, put it by your head so we can show how big it was. But I think that's kind of really a good symbol of what people come and plant and what turns up in the community and all that goodness and growth. So thank you.
Just really quickly, just one. It was real good to listen to your presentation, to hear about getting grounded, navigating through the community. Part of their path or their values, their guidelines was the 4 agreements. And the 4 agreements is to be truthful with your word. Don't take things personally, which is kind of hard to do in a new environment. Don't make assumptions. That's probably really the hardest. And I would say I'm happy that they struggled with that. They did a lot of grieving. But Renee mentioned that they got to participate in the planning for the National Afternoon Out. The truth is, they led the planning. And you did a great job. You had a successful one. Lizzy mentioned about the social justice, and probably the hardest topic for human beings is to do an inner self-look at ourselves. And with Bethel, and again when I mentioned Harley, one of the first research projects that Bethel did was about good intentions. And the students, this is 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, they came up with this definition. Good intentions is good, but goodwill is a lot better. Good intentions means we want you to do it our way. Goodwill means let's do it together. It may not be what we want, but we work together, something magic is going to happen. And we've been having a lot of magical things happening. And of course, the senator, I just don't know how he kept this positiveness, but he definitely kind of followed that 4th rule, which is just do your best, and knowing that your best is going to change from time to time. And I think they all 3 learned the power of saying no. 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 Because sometimes we have to be able to say no in a happy, cheerful way. And they did a great job of doing that and keeping that light shining. So I just want to say thank you. And someone asked me, that's one of the other social workers, if I had bubbles. Silly bubbles. But these are peace bubbles, and I do like bubbles instead of bullets. So thank you very much. And again, thank you, students.
Students come on up. We're gonna have a little bit of Q&A time now, and this is an opportunity for us to have a conversation together. So, what are some questions that those of you who came this morning have?
I guess my question for all of you guys, from this experience, how can you see yourself utilizing this in your future jobs or careers?
I guess for myself, it really, like, I was growing in my interest in the environment and everything, and like gardening, but just this experience really nurtured this love to be out in nature and love to be in the garden, and just see the effects that it has on a community, to have little space to garden or little green space as compared to having a lot or having something. I think as a social work major, and as well as a reconciliation major and someone who's looking at ministry, just like that importance of implementing that work, implementing gardens, implementing food into what I end up doing, or even now, I think is something that I'll continue to carry with me, because I have seen how important it is, and the connections and community that it can cultivate.
For me, I think a major thing would be like just slowing down, because when you're in the garden, it gives you a lot of time to think and process like what's going on around you, what's going on inside of you. And so it allowed for a lot more reflection time. And like was mentioned, this job was a lot more unstructured than jobs I've had formally. But it was a really beautiful thing, because I think I did get a lot of time to think and process and get to build a relationship with the people around me, the people I was working with. So I think I'll take that into my future careers, just in the idea of a lot of the times our society really values like getting it done and like just getting fast and checking the box. But sometimes you really just do need to slow down and breathe, like get your hands in the soil, take time to get to know the people around you. So
I think like the idea that I came out of, one of the ideas was that like people within a community know what their community needs the best.
Yes.
And with that, they also know the answers that they need in order to get those needs met. So I think like the answers to what a community, like the problems that community have, rest in the people within that community. So like if I'm, whether I'm a person in politics or if I'm a person that's in a community organization that's trying to address problems in a community, my job's not to kind of like create the answer for them. It's for them to tell me the answer and then do it for them, if that makes sense. So I think that's one thing that I learned. It was like, these community leaders, they know their community the best, and they know the answers that can fix their community. So especially me coming from outside Frogtown, I think what I learned was that like my role is not to fix these problems. My role is to be a channel for them to fix it themselves. So.
She asked my exact question. Thank you.
No problem.
If no one else does. Well, there's something that's called an aha moment. And so I'd love to hear a story of this little snapshot of something that happened in your summer that was like an aha moment that's going to stay with you. That's like taught you something or gave you something or made you realize something.
I'm sorry. So during the Northern Sparks event, or Northern Lights event that happened in Minneapolis, St. Paul, I was able to one evening volunteer at this event at the Rondo Library, and then the next day just participate. But as I was volunteering, I was just able to do art the whole time. But the beautiful thing about like being there was just, I was able to sit, paint, as well as just talk to people. And that, even though I was tired and like it's getting late, like that was a moment of like, I'm able to talk to like kids and middle schoolers and just really see where they're at and who they are, and hear a little bit about like snippets of their passion. There was one boy in particular, ended up talking to him. Originally I was like, how am I gonna talk to this middle school boy? Like, it's just, I don't even know. But just starting with some basic questions about him and like what he enjoyed doing and what he was painting and all that different stuff really led into some really neat conversations about, I don't even know, know, we talked about Revelation, and he's the one that instigated that. It was just like, he was talking about, I think, anime at one point, and like we talked about history, and some really neat things about history, which I love. So it was just really cool to like, how I started off with like, I don't know how I'm gonna engage, but that really, by just like taking that small step, like that really led into some really cool conversation.
I think for me it was less of like an aha moment and more of like a bunch of very slow and kind of frustrating like lessons that I learned throughout the summer. Like plants don't just grow if you put a seed into the ground and then wait. Like you have to pour into it consistently for the entire summer, and you need to weed every day and you need to water every day. And that was just like a really frustrating thing for me. I think I cultivated like a lot of patience, like that will serve me well in anything, because like there was just a lot of rhythm and a lot of just hard work that you had to put in every day, and you couldn't really take a day off. That's like the things that you're doing suffer when you take like a day off and say like that's not as important today. So I think that's more what it was. It was a culmination of a bunch of different lessons that were slow and are more still ongoing that I'm leaving with.
For me, I guess the main thing happened at the end of the summer, but I think months up to this had been culminating. I guess I had been asking myself for a while how to be a leader as a white person in a way that like empowers other people and what that looks like. And so, like I had mentioned on the presentation, I think the biggest piece for me, the time that like it was the aha moment, was at the end of the summer. Yes, there were some things that were said and done that were not super appropriate for the context, and so I did have to make that decision of like, am I going to be the one to go and try to have a conversation about what just happened with someone, or am I going to wait for someone else to do that? And I think there were lots of different layers about that, as I thought, well, I'm younger than this person, like, do I even have the place to say it? Do I even, like, I'm not there, like, I'm still a work in progress, can I even contribute to this conversation? And so that was kind of my aha moment of like, again, I think what I have to work on is continuing to learn about myself and about my whiteness, and then learn with other people about it too. So
my aha moment is always really trusting the process. And part of that trust in the process, I like the way they keep saying kind of unstructured. It's a different way of living.
Yes.
Part of the Bethel partnership, we have learned some lessons. For instance, for professors, for sure, you're going to have a community meeting in Rondo or Frogtown. Like, please don't set yourself up to schedule another meeting back here on campus by a certain time, because it's not going to happen. In the community, it's not about a monochronic. It's more about polyrhythm. It's about relationships. Whoever is in front of you, that's what's important. That's where you spend your time. Some of the ha-ha moments for me was just constantly hearing wisdom from the students, or even more so, courage. Even now, when I hear Lizzy say whiteness, I'm like looking around like, is that safe to say?
Come on now, come on now.
I think it is.
Yes, it is.
I think, and man, that's a big ha-ha.
Yeah.
Because, and I can look at Susie and say, maybe 18 years ago, you talking about whiteness. We're all the same. But now we have stepped up to a place where we can name things. And for me, that's a ha-ha. And it's trusting the process. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I guess my question stemming off of what Sean stated about like pouring in and like constantly pouring into something, allowing it to bloom. So for your own lives, during this experience, have you guys recognized something that you guys probably have to pour into more so, whether that's your Bibles, people, your own communities, to allow those to blossom in your own lives.
I think for me, it's definitely actually like my own community. I think like we all kind of got a taste of what a tight-knit community actually looks like, and I definitely know like where I live, outside of the context of Bethel, like I barely know the person that lives next door to me, let alone my community as a whole. I can't even say that I'm very in touch with the place that I live in. Could I say like what are the problems that the person across the street from me face that might be different than me, or that might be the same? I couldn't even tell you. So I think actually in general, we don't really know what a tight-knit community actually looks like. I think in the U.S. in general, that's kind of something that goes above us. I think we're just very accustomed to our own little bubbles, and we're very hardwired to like our families and our lives, and we lose sight of what it looks like to care for our community. So I think that's just something that I'm taking away from this, is that I have a community that I need to pour into, and the things that happen around me affect everybody. So that's what I'm taking out of it.
For me, I've taken away just the idea of like, normally in my day, my mind is in a million different places and I'm rushing from here to there, and like just this experience has taught me how I can really focus in on one thing, and specifically like the people and community, because at the end of the day, like people are all that matters, you know. And so just being able to really invest there and learn more about how to also like grow community, develop community, and definitely beyond like I think what Bethel calls community, like what Sean was talking about, like seeing needs and just coming alongside people more. So
I think two things kind of come to mind. One, just like the assumptions I noticed, like that I had previous to the summer, assumptions that I was like struggling with concerning people of color or communities or wealth, and as I'd be walking down Summit Avenue or just like all these different things that I'm like noticing, I'm like, we need to work through that. We gotta wrestle that out, and bringing God into that. So struggling and wrestling with those assumptions that I've had and acknowledging them of like, okay, this is something I have and have experienced and a mindset that I commonly have, and then working towards dismantling that assumption and coming in with a new perspective and coming in with an open perspective is something that I was working through this summer, but also continuing to work through. And I just had I forgot it. So that's fine.
Let's go over here.
Okay, so first of all, Melvin, I just have to honor you publicly. You are such a gift to us at Bethel. It's no joke. So many students have been touched by your wisdom, your humility, your tenderness, your sense of fun, and a deep and vibrant spirituality. We are so honored that you would allow us to learn from you and others in the community, and are deeply blessed by your generosity. So I want to thank you.
Thank you. We are reflections for each other.
That just moves me too much. Megan, is it Megan Phinney? I've never met you, but your handprint is on this program. Again, your tenderness, your seasoned eldership, the knowledge you bring to the table. It's so important for our students to see an elder white woman who has her own voice. Thank you. And finally, my students, that I'm gonna start crying, but I don't even know Lizzy, but Lizzy, you're a nursing student. Is there a nursing faculty member here? Can I just say, I don't care where I go in the community, I know a Bethel student that has graduated from a nursing program. I would have my own mother, who I love, be cared for by a Bethel student that's graduated from a nursing program. I have yet to have a bad student from nursing take one of my classes. And your courage to name whiteness, Melvin is right. New day, new day. And I have a lot of hope for your generation that can go there in ways that your parents' generation may not. But I have a lot of hope for your generation, and you do carry great wisdom. Sean is a senator. He is. And I love that Sean can name his frustrations, because we have to deal with these messy emotions. And he's good for that. He's one of my deep internal processors. He dropped some wisdom that when I talk to esteemed colleagues around the country, they say, he said what? He has other top scholars thinking about questions that he dares to ask. And it doesn't surprise me that Renee is connected to the earth. This woman is destined for some great things, okay? But I'm not talking about great things in terms of high achievement. I'm not talking about that kind of standard. I'm talking about great things that's about connecting with people and the earth. She brings so much to the table. So you captured them so well, Melvin. That says so much about you as a connector. So thank you. I feel so blessed. So blessed by all of you. Thank you.
Well, I know we're getting close to time, but Melvin, you mentioned that they learned to say no, and I noticed all of you really mentioned the process of gardening includes weeding as well as growth. Mm-hmm. So just curious if you could say maybe briefly what you had to say no to, or like part of growth is saying no and weeding things out. So how do you recognize that process in your experience?
It was definitely hard throughout the summer. That challenge of like saying no, and that pressure to like, this is why I'm here, so I have to do things, right? But I think it really dawned on me at the end of the summer, just like that power that I do have, and being asked to do things and saying, no, Melvin, I can't, I don't have the capacity for this. And so whether that was like in certain like little projects to do, or saying like, no, I can't attend this one thing because I just can't today. I think it was a process of learning that and seeing like, oh, I actually have that power and that's something I can do, and actually implementing that.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, it kind of like refined our ability to do things with excellence, because at some point if you say yes to everything, you're not doing a good job at anything. So like it allowed us to be able to really focus on certain things. And yeah, learn how to make commitments that we know we can follow through. Thank you.
Yeah, I think to build off of that too, like there's always work that needs to be done, especially once you open that door of like, how can we make our community better? Like once you open that door, that's work that's never going to be finished. So like it was really just asking ourselves like, at this moment, do I have the capacity to do my best at what you're asking me to do? And if I don't, then I have to say no until I can do it. And then that's really what it was. Learning to say like, I can't do that right now, maybe in the future.
Can we give our panelists one more round of applause? I'm so thankful for each of you that you've taken time to come today and share and talk publicly. The Bethel FSU partnership is really a partnership that's created by the people that are involved.
Yes.
So thank you. Thanks for the audience members who have been involved, the ways you've contributed. You've made it such a beautiful, rich partnership. There are some ways to get more connected on the back table there. There's a sign-up sheet that myself and Gracie, my student worker, will send you some information. There's also some other brochures back there. Feel free to grab those on your way out. But again, thanks for coming this morning.
Thank you, Tandon.
And I'd like to just thank Jane and Ann for this nice setup.
Yes,
They'll
yes,
call me
yes.
and coffee. Thank you very much. But also, please give Tandon.
Come on now. Yeah, yeah.
The job he has is that liaison,
True.
he's the bridge,
Yep.
community, and Bethel, the institution, Oh, boy. And we all love Bethel. But what the work Panda does, he is the face.
Yes, he is.
And he's doing a wonderful, fantastic job.
Yes, he is.
Fantastic
Amen.
job.
Amen.